ham, eat the nasty butcher man.
Hello everybody and welcome to the third episode of the Oink blog and Beyond's YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be covering what I should have covered last time, which is my very first comic ever, which unsurprisingly is an issue of Oink. Last time we went over the building of some shelves, complete with some cliche time-lapse music. That's going to come not the next video, but the one after that. I'm going to go over those comics and why I'm collecting them and why I would recommend these particular titles to anybody who, like me, primarily read classic comics, like this lot behind me here. I've been doing that for several years before buying anything new or modern, and now I'm completely hooked. But today it is about that first ever comic. Now, as well as the classics I'm reading now for the blog, I'm reading sort of one comic at a time in real time. That was always the point of the Oink blog. Oink itself, when I was covering them on the blog from 2013 for the 2.5 years, I was reading them and writing a blog post on the date of each comic's release. And that was the whole point. And I've been doing that with other comics since, and the next one of that, which is a non-Oink comic, is coming this week, and so I'll probably do a video introducing it, and that is Wildcat, if you remember that from back in let me see, was it late 80s? Yeah, late 80s. So there'll be a video of that coming very soon. But speaking of other things that I read other than Oink, really stretching the link there, Oink was the first comic ever bought for me. I was aware of comics. My friends were collecting Transformers and things like that. My brother was collecting Roy the Rovers and the Beano every week. Every Christmas I would read his Beano and Dandy books, and at the time my young self thought they were okay, but I didn't read his weekly comic. We had a glance of it, that was it. I read the Knight Rider, A-Team and Airwolf strips in my sister's Look-In magazines. But apart from that, I wasn't interested in comics, but I did read an awful lot. Before the TV series ever came along, I would collect the Railway series by the Reverend W. Awdry, which would later become Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and became a major obsession of mine. But then I grew up in a town that had steam trains in it. I know it does not mean I'm that old. The Railway Preservation of Ireland was based there. And Storyteller was another one, a magazine and cassette series, which only when I became an adult and happened to read about it, realised the absolute talent that would write and narrate these stories were really spoilt. So I did read a lot as a kid, although I do remember I didn't like reading what school gave us to read, but I did spend an awful lot of time in the school library choosing books to read. Anyway, but yes, Oink. Very vague memories of being in the newsagents and seeing this comic. It drew my attention, and this is the actual issue. Not the physical copy, but this is the actual issue. It was issue 14, came out on the 1st of November 1986, and that's when I got into comics. This is the crime issue. Every issue had a subject at this time, every fortnight. Might seem like a strange subject, but we'll get into that. It's not really. But that was the start of it. And I realised this is my very first issue. When I was doing the blog, there was this here. This is a three-part calendar poster for 1987, which a couple of years ago matched up with the actual dates of 2017 or something, which is fantastic. But anyway, I remember having that as a kid, so it was some stage just before that. That came in issue 15, part 1 of it. And then when I read this for the blog, there was a certain page in this which I have very distinct memories of as a kid. It taxed my mind. It kept me up late one night and it made me roar with laughter. We'll get to that, but we're going to go through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick look through this, just go over it and sort of remember what it was like to discover comics for the first time. And I said Oink did have a subject. And those subjects didn't just cover the usual things like Christmas and Halloween, Hogmanay, which at the time I thought was a pun as a kid, until I found out that actually is the actual phrase. As well as this was a crime issue, later issues would have things like war, fitness, animals, just going absolutely berserk and crazy, families, anything at all could be a subject in any one of these issues, and the majority of the strips and the content inside would follow those subjects. It was great. So crime is not a weird subject. Some of the ones they did have were way out there. But if you think about it, Oink's longest running comic strip was Tom Thug. He was a school bully. He ended up in Buster comic after Oink folded for many years, created by Lee Stringer. Tom Thug was probably one of my very favourite strips in Oink, and to this day is one of my very favourite comic characters. He was a school bully. And at the time, some people thought this was bad. How can you have a comic strip based on a school bully? That's the wrong impression. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be showing this to kids. Kids are going to get the wrong idea. No, you lot got the wrong idea, because Tom's plans, if you call them that, never went right. He always ended up the loser in spectacular fashion. The fact he was a school bully, he was the butt of the jokes every issue, and that was the whole point. So, looking at this issue, I remember the Grunts pages. They were, all the Fleetway comics at the time were very different than Marvel's comics. Marvel's comics, the letters pages they were just letters, really. But they were answered brilliantly by different comics characters, such as Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters, the brilliant Dreadwind in Transformers. And they were usually very sarcastic and snarky with their readers, and in a loving way, and taking the mickey out of them. Fleetway Comics had everything from photographs and drawings and jokes and stories sent in by the readers, and they encouraged it. But just on the first page has Jeremy Banks, a pig identifying the butcher that cut him open and made some sausages of him. On page 3 is my first exposure ever to Ian Jackson's artwork. His jagged lines, his artwork was completely different than anything I'd ever seen or anything I would ever see again in comics. It's quintessentially Oink, and he was probably the main artist for the majority of the run. I absolutely loved his work. Mainly Uncle Pig, the fictional editor of Oink. He would draw him. This is Mary Lighthouse, the critic, obviously named after Mary Whitehouse, a very famous critic of television and comics and basically everything enjoyable back in the 80s. And on the very next page, he also draws the secret diary of Hadrian Vile, aged 7 and 5/5 years. As the comic went on, his age actually went up with the comic, which was unique. He actually had a baby sister as well. His mum became pregnant and remained pregnant for the right amount of time in the comic. So if the comic had carried on for many more years, he would have become a snot-nosed little teenager. At the minute, he's a little snot-nosed 8-year-old. Again, the artwork, and you think this is before really desktop publishing. Obviously, it's all hand-drawn, but all those words, they've all been written on a typewriter, then meticulously cut out and glued by hand on the original artwork before being printed. The amount of work that must have went into these, and this is every single issue, his pages look like this, and they're absolutely just fantastic. I remember the Oink book having Hadrian Vile's Intellectual's Guide to History or something like that there. Everything was always spelled wrong. Again, typewritten words all over the place, but it was in full colour, and it just really showed off Ian Jackson's work. Ian Jackson also did that famous piggy plasticine front and back cover to that book as well. Those were instantly, this is what drew me into Oink. And on the very back page, the back cover is the hold up. Just a one-off strip which Oink was full of. I'm going to show you it now, panel by panel, so you can have a really good look at this and the gag at the end. And it was a one-off. That was a one-off strip. And Oink was full of them. And the strips inside, they were all over the place. They were different sizes and shapes. And from issue to issue, the characters would jump from different pages, and one week a main character could have a double page spread, the next week he could have half a page or a page and a half. This is what it was. It was seemingly random, obviously all intricately worked out in advance to seem as random as possible. And that was just the genius of Oink. Ian Jackson's work was definitely a highlight of this issue. I'm going to take you through some more. And the first one for my young eyes was the Unprofessionals. Obviously a piss take of the Professionals TV show starring Martin Shaw. CI5, as it was named in the show, their agents aren't exactly up to the task as they are on TV. This strip has them walking past as a regular supermarket, and somebody says about their child that's asleep, a baby that's asleep, and someone says, oh, I do love to see a kid napping. That sets them off on a shooting spree. Someone shouts at them, oh my god, there's 2 loonies with guns. That sets them off in a shooting spree. They think there's 2 criminals somewhere with guns. And at the end, we realise that their boss has given Dozy and Boyle, as they are named here, just pop guns instead of actual real guns. The artwork here by Ron Tyner would not look out of place in an actual Professionals comic. And so I loved it. And in fact, when it came to issue 15, I remember as a kid being quite disappointed this strip wasn't in it. I do remember watching the Professionals in bed. I shared a room with my brother and seeing things like the Professionals and Miami Vice and all these shows I wasn't allowed to watch from underneath the bed sheets as I pretended to be asleep. So that was my first inkling of the kind of humour Oink would have, and it simply wouldn't hold back. Another thing was when I was going over this issue again when reviewing it quite a few years ago on the website, was my first photo strip, and this is the one and only Marc Riley, who is now known as a Radio 6 Music BBC radio DJ, also as part of Mark and Lard as well, if you remember them. He was part of the band The Fall, and that's his voice you can hear, and that truly terrible Oink rap at the start and the end of all these videos, which was, I got it later when I was a kid. I bought the Oink record, which is 3 songs, but in the very first issue they give away a floppy flexi disc of 2 songs, including that one, and I still have an issue 1 with that disc attached. And a couple of years ago a friend got me, or last Christmas rather, a friend got me a record player as a present, so I was actually able to grab that song for these videos. You're welcome. The big sneak sees him, usually he would play Snatcher Sam, a criminal, and in fact in this issue there is a big wanted poster, which I'm not too sure if Mark would actually like that being shown these days, but the big sneak has him as Snatcher Sam Spade, private detective. And reading this now as an adult, I roared with laughter. You know what that phrase, I pulled out my gun and I let him have it. We know what that means. In this strip, it means something completely different. Faced with a gorilla, I give him a slug in the mouth, hits him with a giant slug, and then I pull out my gun and I let him have it, and he just gives it to the bad guy. I roared with laughter at this because up to this point the amount of puns and visual gags was tipping over, and it was just classic stuff. Just stupid humour, and that's what you wanted as a kid. You know, you wanted something fresh and different. You know, something that really spoke to those of us who other comics just, they made us smile. They never actually made us laugh. You know, and that was the whole point of Oink. As anybody will know if you've read the blog, the whole background of the comic is there. Here you've also got things like a spoof of Judge Dredd with Judge Pig. As you can see here, artwork superbly detailed here, drawn by Steve Gibson, who these days, if you look him up on social media, well, while you might want your kids to read this and have a good laugh, I wouldn't show them the artwork that he does today. Let's just leave it at that. Judge Pig would return about 40 issues later. Absolutely brilliant. And I remember showing this to some friends of mine at the time who bought 2000 AD religiously every week, and they loved it. They thought it was great. Same as I thought whenever I saw things I was into, like Transformers and Thomas the Tank Engine, having the Mickey taken out by Oink, it was like seeing your favourite celebrity on spitting image. On the next page is this. You are the detective. And this is what I was telling you about at the start of this video. This is the page that I remember when I was reading this on the 1st of November 2013. And I flipped over and I saw this. I thought, I remember this. This was my first issue. Ah, brilliant. I have a very distinct memory of being in my bedroom, double bed. For some reason I had two single beds as well. It was a big, big bedroom at the top of the house, the roof coming down. Late at night, reading this and trying to figure it out. Now I'm going to take you a closer look, and then I'm going to leave it on the screen for a bit so that you can pause, zoom in, have a look at it yourself, and then I'll give the answer to the puzzle at the very end of the video after the credits, okay? So a murder has been committed. Wealthy playboy Wayne Slump has been found dead in his country mansion. Who killed him? So there's pictures here on the right hand side, and the main picture itself contains clues you need to figure out the identity of the killer. Study this page carefully, and then it says turn to page 31 to see if you've guessed correctly. So I'm going to put this up on the screen. I'm going to slowly scroll down the main image and then show each of the characters, and then show you the main image again. It's up to you if you want to pause it and have a look at it. I'm not going to leave it on the screen for ages, don't worry, just a few seconds, and then we'll round up. Pause it and try to work it out yourself. You will not get it, trust me. So there's the main image, drawn by Mike Roberts. On the right hand side are all the suspects. Here's other profiles first, and then a close-up of the actual image. See what clues you can pull out. So those are just some of the highlights of not just my first issue of Oink, but my first ever comic. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have got into other comics at the time. From this became an obsession of buying comics. And my parents actually, apart from the fact this was silliness, I was reading. So instead of wanting to spend my pocket money on sweets, I was spending my pocket money on comics, and I was developing my reading. From that though, Transformers, everything that's over here, it all stems from this. You can see the full review of this issue of Oink written before on the blog. You will see the highlights I've shown you here. You'll see them in full on the blog. Some particular highlights there will include the ones from this video and a couple of others as well. So if you do want to see the You Are the Detective full screen, go check out. I'll tell you how to get there. And it also includes an introduction. My first issue included an introduction to Pig Pals, that's what readers will call their nemesis, Jimmy the Cleaver Smith, the terrifying butcher that would turn up here and there randomly throughout the comics run to terrify young readers. So you want to check it out, just go to the Oink blog. You will have, there'll be a link up on the screen at the end of this video. Otherwise, just scroll down and the link will be underneath in the description of this video. Just click there. Okay. Once there's a little menu underneath the main title. It's just there on desktop or the scrolling bar on your phone or tablets. Just hit the Oink section, and then you will see there you can go into regular issues, specials. You can see the issues that give away free gifts. There's extra content. Just go into the regular issues, and there are all of the regular fortnightly, weekly, monthly issues of Oink, and you can start number 14 and check out the full review and as I say, some cherry picked highlights as well, including the ones here that I've shown you in video. You can check them out in more depth. As I say, I'll be back later on this week. Well, this is a Saturday, so you say next week, with a quick introduction to Wildcat, the next comic that's going to be read in real time here on the blog, right here in the blog, on the website. This video is going to be on the website as well, not just YouTube. It's been a while since I've done that. The last one was Visionaries. It's been a few months break. Looking forward to getting back into it. So check that out. I will see you then. And in the meantime, remember to check out the blog. There's a lot more stuff to come. Stuff that I have let slide the last while thanks to everything's been going on in the world, moving house and everything. So I hope you're enjoying these videos. Comment below, subscribe if you want, all the usual yada yada stuff you see at the end of each video, and I will see you soon.
Who eat pigs? 'Cause they're made from hell. Eat the nasty butcher man. Pigs in daytime, pigs at night. If you read Oink, you'll be alright. 'Cause pigs will know that you're okay. 'Cause the pigs are here to stay.